Welcome back, everybody. These next few videos we're going to focus on doing your plastic filler work. Everybody calls plastic filler Bondo. That's what I'm going to call it. It's a lot easier. There's some things you can do to make your work go a little bit easier. There's some things that you can't avoid, you're going to have problems with. I'll show you how to alleviate those, minimize some of that stuff, and get you through this a lot quicker. So the first thing we're going to do, we've got this fender here, and I've got a few things going on here. I put a sharp crease in here, and this here I've repaired before, but I put a few more dents here and there, and I'm going to show you a couple tricks on how to make this come out easier. Sometimes you don't have complete access to the back side to get it hammered out as nice as you want. Sometimes it's not worth messing with the stud gun. You'll do more damage. So in this instance, there's a few dents in here, a little deeper than I usually use, but I left them in there just for this video. The first thing we're going to talk about is pinholes. Now, some guys will claim that they never get any pinholes. I don't think that's the case. What happens, they always say when you mix your Bondo up, when you're mixing it, you're mixing air in there and you're getting pinholes in it when you put it on. Well, that's true. There's no way to avoid that, but there are things you can do to minimize the pinholes. One of the things is have your body work as straight as possible. And that means the sheet metal work before your Bondo even goes on. If you can get it straight as you can, it's going to be less filler. The more filler you put on, the more chance you have for pinholes. So you're going to have pinholes no matter what. And what I'm going to show you here is a couple problem areas, and you'll probably agree with me, you've run into this. Say you've got an edge right here that's pushed in, and when you're putting your Bondo on, you can't take that and force it in. When you force the Bondo to your spreader down there, you're pushing the air out. But if you've got to build up an edge here, or maybe this crown up here, higher in the fender, you can't put a lot of pressure because you'll force your filler out. That's where you're going to get your pinholes, just because of the lack of pressure to force them out. So you can't avoid those, but it's just areas you need to look at before you go and prime this to just double check, make sure there's no pinholes. So I'm going to take my DA with some 80 grit and get started, and I'm going to break this down. Right now we're just going to work on this part. We'll come back to this later in another video, and I'm going to show you some other tricks there, but I'm going to get my DA going and we'll get this sanded and go from there. Okay, I've got my fender sanded, and what I usually do is just 80 grit on most of the damage area. And if you've watched my previous videos, I always say leave the paint on. It's good protectant. With the E-coat in there, it's a good substrate. You can actually use it for a guide coat. You can see your high and low points. But I'll take 80 grit over most of it and then finish the edges with 120. You don't want to gouge in too much because you're going to have to get those 80 grit marks out eventually if you put them all the way down around your edges. So I've got some Bondo mixed up here, and I'm going to get this put on. And you want to put as much pressure as you can on. That'll force out pinholes. And like I said, on this crown area up here, which is low, if you put too much pressure on, you're just forcing it out. So I'm going to build this edge up, and that's an area that you'll need to look at as far as pinholes, because if there's going to be any in there, it's going to be right up in here, because we need to build that edge up without forcing it out. Another important thing to do, where your Bondo stops, I want to take and flatten that out as much as I can. I don't want to leave a sharp edge on there. It's just going to make the job harder to feather it out. So all the way around the edges, I'll taper that down with the spreader so it's almost transparent, and you can go out a little bit farther than you think you need because you want a little bit extra on those edges just to taper everything in. Most of it's probably going to disappear when you sand it, but that's actually what you want to accomplish. Build this edge up here a little bit. And everything else is going to be put on with as much pressure as I can without forcing it out of the dents. So like I said, you can't completely avoid pinholes, but you can minimize them. And the key is just go back later and know what areas to look for. And that's going to be any crown, or if you had a big low spot that you really need to fill and you're putting light pressure, that's probably where your pinholes are going to be. So keep all this in mind. Next video, we're going to be sanding this down and show you a few tricks how to make this go a lot quicker. So thanks for watching.